just as a reminder, guys, the Cowboys won last night. How did the Niners do?
They also won.
Good. I'm glad to hear that they won against Arizona, right? They didn't lose by 1 point or anything? Sorry, that's not fair. I shouldn't throw that shade. What class did you guys have just now? Wait, no, hold on. How was your last class?
Lit.
Okay, cool. Indeed it was. Lit. Okay. So here we go. We talked about this. This is my division algorithm. We are going to use this and make a ton of handy stuff come out of this eventually. We're going to make 2 big notes. So, warning. Warning. That's what I want you to think of when you're thinking about dividing stuff. Warning. Every time that you're doing a long division, you need, or the other division that we talk about, you need to consider the following. As you're working these problems, 2 things that I would strongly suggest, otherwise you're going to get wrong. Like it's just going to happen. First thing, always list in descending powers. List in descending powers. Every single time you're doing division, whether it's long division or the other way we're going to see, very specifically what I mean is if I have this written, f of x, for whatever reason, I've decided to make it x squared plus 2 minus 3x cubed plus x to the 4th. That drives me bonkers, just first and foremost, because it's in the wrong order. Descending means you start big and get small, or start small and get big. Start big and get small. This thing would become what if we rearranged it? X to the 4th. Sorry, minus 3x cubed plus x squared. Awkward pause for a second, plus 2. I have an issue with being able to descend here at this point in time. What's after x to the 2? So it should be x to the 1, right? Which this is actually going to be my second warning, but it's going to fill in here as well. Always list in descending powers. Sorry. And then beyond that, we also always include placeholders. Now, for the placeholder, it ties in with this. I'm going to put an arrow right here. I need an x to the 1 here. Unfortunately, we don't have any, but that's a number. What is my number of x to the 1s that I have? 0 of them. It feels like it's not going to make a big difference. It makes a huge difference. You need to include it. Okay. We have done several division problems. Should we do one more long division right meow? If I give you one, could you do it? You think so? Prove it. Okay. Ooh. Okay. If you're on the bottom of your page, I would turn it. This is a big one. Example, last long division. For now. Last long div. All right. Here we go with your neighbors. Weird. I don't know why it came out like that. Or me, if you need help with it. I want you to do the following. I'm trying to decide how ugly I want this to be. Cool. I want you to do this. I'm going to write it just as a division right off the bat, okay? So the divisor that we're going to deal with is x squared plus x minus 1. That's my divisor. And I want you to see how many times, and if nicely, this goes into the following dividend. We get 6x to the 4th. Minus x cubed minus x squared plus 9x minus 3. Cool. I'm going to give you a head start. I'm going to get my steps in for the hour so my watch doesn't yell at me. If you have questions, who are you going to call? Either one of those would be fine for the situation. Perfect. Me or Ghostbusters. Cool. Before I just say jump in, who's most important here? We haven't done a problem like this, but you can reason out, I think. On my dividend, sorry, my divisor, who matters most? X squared. Okay. I will give you guys a minute. I'll walk around. Let me know if you have questions. Riley, if you're watching this, you will see detailed work for this. Pause it. Try to work through it. You'll see my detailed work in 3, 2, 1. This is the most important term, that x squared. And it's, what's the coefficient, the number in front of this? 1. So the x squared is the most important term here because this is the one that we have to work off of. Now, I never write this, but it's always important to be mindful of it. If there's no number in front of it, what is the number in front of it? If we don't write it, it's a 1. Now, when I think through these problems, and I would suggest as you think through these problems, if you struggle to try to come up with like what you're going to use, do number to number to get to the 6 that we need in this case, then do variable to variable to think about what we need to multiply it by. So to be able to write a 6 right here, I need to multiply it by 6, yeah? 1 times 6 would give me that 6. I also have an x squared. What do I multiply x squared by to get x to the 4th? X squared. I'm not going to write it here. I'm not going to write it here. I'm going to write it above x squared. So I knew there was a 6 and there's an x squared. Okay, now we distribute. 1x squared times 6x squared is 6x to the 4th. 6x squared times 1x is 6x cubed, and it's a positive. And negative 1 times 6x squared is minus 6x squared. What is the point of these parentheses? So I like both of those. To not get mixed up, I don't know that I agree with the language, but to make sure the negative factors in, right? Because we subtract. Now, it gets really messy if you actually distribute in. So on this one, I always just think this out. As we subtract through, we have 6x squared minus, 6x to the 4th minus 6x to the 4th. What happens with them? They're gone, right? They're 0. Okay, we have negative x cubed minus 6x cubed. That gets me to what number? Negative 7, and it's still x cubed. We have negative x squared minus a negative 6x squared, which winds up adding. I think it's going to be plus 4x squared. Okay, in the immortal lyrics of Snoop, we drop this how? As if it's warm in temperature. That's correct. Okay, now we need to eliminate what? The negative 7x cubed. That's our next little piece. We need this to fall out. Did I make a mistake somewhere? People are looking. Which one? Negative 1 plus 6 is definitely a 5. Thank you for the catch. Anybody else notice that? Call me out immediately. Okay, now the thought is, what do I multiply this 1x squared by to give myself a negative 7x cubed? So I already know the number is negative 7. It has to be. Say, can you, one more time? So they didn't cross out. This is negative x squared minus a negative 6x squared, which changes to plus. So we just have negative x squared plus 6x squared.
Why does the positive 6x turn into negative 7x?
Because remember, we put parentheses around because everything subtracts. So what I'm trying to avoid is having to do this. If I know it's a negative, what I don't want you guys to have to do is to say, oh, that's negative, and now that's negative, and that's a plus, because this gets really messy to follow the work. If you just distribute and change the sign one by one, you don't have to keep it all straight. You just need to be able to tell minus a negative is a plus or whatever. Okay. Does that make sense?
I guess so.
We'll try it again right here. We'll get another check at it. Okay, so I now need to get rid of this. X squared times what gets me negative 7x cubed? So let's just go number to number. 1 times what gets me negative 7? So here's my negative 7. And x squared times what gets me x cubed? X. Okay, this distributes. 1x squared times negative 7x is negative 7x cubed. Negative 7x times x is negative 7x squared. And negative 7x times negative 1 is a plus 7x. Parentheses, so I don't forget to do what? So kind of distribute the what? I would say distribute the negative. I always say subtract. And then, Huggins, we're going to check this out again, and hopefully it doesn't feel like I'm targeting you. Okay, we're going to do negative 7x cubed minus what?
Negative 7x.
So what happens when you minus a negative?
I don't know. I'm bad with
No, that's okay. Somebody help.
It's positive.
A positive. So now this is negative 7x cubed plus, and they're gone, right? Okay, now let's try this one. 5x squared minus a negative 7, which turns to plus again. 5x squared plus 7x squared.
12x squared.
Good. 9x minus 7x.
2x.
Good. And we'll drop it again. Now, for those of... Did that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. For those of you that maybe didn't write this in the same order, you don't have to necessarily write your x squared above x squared, but it's what's going to tell us when we're done if you don't catch it otherwise. The last thing we need to do is I need to write a 12x squared right here so that it subtracts out. What do I multiply x squared by to get it to be 12x squared? Good. Kalisha says plus 12. And we'll distribute. It's 12x squared plus 12x minus 12. Parentheses one last time so I don't forget to subtract. And then let's check it. 12x squared minus 12x squared, they gone. 2x minus 12x. Negative 10x. Negative 3 minus negative 12. Plus 9. Now, I'm at the end of the list. I can't go any further. We have our answer. The true answer to this division, and I'm not going to rewrite the whole thing, but our quotient that we found was 6x squared minus 7x plus 12 plus, I have a remainder, yeah? Negative 10x plus 9? And that gets divided by what? X squared plus x minus 1. Okay. It takes a little bit of practice, and you guys here in a minute are going to be like, well, why the hell do we spend so much time doing it this way? Because I'm about to show you a better way to do this, with one exception. This is the hardest one we've done so far. Can you tell me, compared to the other 3 or so that we've done, why this one might have been more challenging? Specifically with regard to the divisor. If you look back at the previous examples we've worked, this divisor is uglier. Every other divisor was just a binomial, and it was x to the first power, right? We divided by a trinomial this time. Did the method really change? No, you had to do one more distribution, and maybe the problem was a little bit longer. But this, I promise there's a reason I'm making us do so much long division. So with that in mind, should we learn a shortcut for when we maybe don't need long division? Okay, you guys are going to remember bits and pieces of this. Long division's all fine and dandy. And I actually don't mind it, but there's a better way. Let's talk about synthetic division. Without being able to explain the concept, can you guys tell me whether you remember ever hearing this? And I think we talked about it last week. So this is the one that's always easier, I think. But here's the really important part. This synthetic division is going to act as a shortcut, or I'm just going to say a shorter way to divide. And there's a little bit of lie in here, but we'll be okay with that. A shorter way to divide. Use if and only if the divisor is of the form, and this is going to look obnoxious, 1x minus k. I would never write 1 normally, but I really want to stress this idea. It's really just x minus k. Is it negative x or is it just x? It's x, positive, right? That is super duper important. Now, to do this, I want to try to just do an example with it, because the general steps, they don't look super nice. If we need it, we'll draw them out. But we're going to see how much you guys remember of it, okay? So if we're dividing by 1x minus k, and I didn't write it, but I will, 1x to the what power? 1. Huggins, if you zoned out for a minute, this is like the most important thing we're doing today. So I'd make sure you have this. Okay, let's do an example, and then we'll see if we need to write the general form. Okay, divide synthetically. Let's do the following example. So I'm just going to say synth, so that's synthetic. And here we go. I want us to divide 2x cubed, and this will be example A, sorry. 2x cubed minus 8x squared plus 13x, lost my spot, minus 10. I'm going to put parentheses around that whole thing and say we're dividing it by, I don't know, x minus 2. Right off the bat, am I dividing by something of the form 1x minus a number? Now, if it had been this, don't change it. Is this still of that form? It'd just be minus negative 2, right? So it's still minus k. All right. To do this, I'm just going to, in blue, just in case we need it, say that, hey, this is of the form x minus k, where k in this situation is what number? With k equal to 2. All right. For shame. Starts Wednesday. Okay. K is 2 in this situation. To synthetically divide, we're going to put k on the outside of our synthetic box. We're going to put a 2 right here. Okay. Does anybody recall what else we put in here? Because our synthetic box will look like this. Okay, this row. Coefficients of dividend. If we were missing a power, what would we need to do? Placeholder. So I'm just going to say this top row is the coefficients, the numbers in front of everything in my dividend. And then this value right here is just k. So we can kind of label it. Now, we're going to put the coefficients of the dividend in here. So let's see. I'm going to check first, am I missing any powers of x? X to the third, to the 2, to the 1, and this is really an x to the 0, but we just don't write it. I have them all, right? What's the coefficient of the biggest term? That's the power. How about the coefficient? 2. How about the next term? Negative 8. The next? 13. And the last? Negative 10. Before we continue on, any questions about where I found these numbers? Why is the 2? Are you talking on the outside or the inside? The inside, because what's my first term? How many x cubed? Nope, x cubed, but what's the coefficient in the number? Good. Notice, this 2 goes here, this negative 8 goes here, this 13 goes here. As long as I'm not missing any, we're good. Now, this first one is always a little bit strange. We get it for free. And this is the real Snoop comment, but this term, straight down. Drop it. Every single time, it drops. Okay. Now the process really kicks in. And again, if we need the generalized form, we can, but it's not super convenient to write. We're going to take our k value, and we're going to multiply it. This here, and you can draw these this time, multiply. So what's 2 times 2? 4. I'm going to write that result right here. Anybody remember what happens next? Almost. Opposite of that. Now add straight down. Negative 8 plus 4. Negative 4. And we are adding straight down. So now the process just repeats. And this is why it gets so ugly so fast. This 2 is now linked with this negative 4. And it does what? It multiplies again. What's 2 times negative 4? Negative 8. And then straight down I do what? Add What's 13 plus a negative 8? Or if you'd rather, 13 minus 8. 5? What am I going to multiply this 5 by? 2, and I get 10. And then you probably didn't do this last year, but it's something that I started doing after my first year ever teaching this. On the very last term, I always add this. And when you add these, what do you get? Okay. Can anybody tell me what we've just found? So this is the remainder of 0. And then these 3 are the coefficients of the quotient, I'll call it Q of x, with degree, or order if you'd rather, 1 less than dividend. Okay, there's a lot of stuff going on in this. Okay, the remainder is 0. There's some major significance to this. These are the coefficients. Now, what is the largest degree in the dividend? A cube, right? A 3. These are the coefficients of a quotient where the degree is 1 less than the dividend. If the biggest degree here was a 3, then the biggest one here is what's 1 less than 3? 2. These are the coefficients. This becomes my actual answer for this division then is 2, and it's x to which power this time? Squared, because it's just 1 less. Minus 4, x to which power? The 1. I'm not going to write it. And then finally, plus 5, x to the 0 if you wanted to include it. Now, what we have just found is super duper significant, and maybe that is beyond just noticing right now. Is x minus 2 a factor of that bigger function, 2x cubed minus x squared plus 13x minus 10? How do you know? The remainder is 0. I know x minus 2 is a factor. Can you tell me another factor? 2x squared minus 4x plus 5, and this is not our focus right now. But can anybody tell me 2 numbers that multiply to be 10 but add up to negative 4? And that's a poor example because we can't right now. That's okay. Let's do one more. And then I think I'm going to give you an assignment tonight with the understanding that it won't be due tomorrow. It'll be due Wednesday. All right, let's try another one. I want you guys to do the following. Let's say x to the 4th minus 10x squared minus 2x plus 4. And I want us to divide this mess by x plus 3. I want to start the problem together, just the very first step. The biggest place for a mistake to happen here, and there's really 2 places. So we'll do the first 2 steps together here. First thing I care about, what is k? Negative 3, because you would have to have x minus negative 3. Okay, negative 3 goes outside. Can anybody see any other warning signs that are just waiting here for us? There's no x cubed written. That just means there's how many? 0. So let's check it. First term, what's its coefficient?
Why is it 3?
Oh, because I'm dividing by x minus k. But to make it turn into x plus 3, it has to be this. So a 1 here. Then what? 0. We need to cover, there's 0x cubes. We need to make sure every power is represented. 1x to the 4th, 0x cubed. This is our placeholder. And then any x squareds? Negative 10 of them. Any x's? Negative 2 of them. Any constants? 4. So anytime that you're missing one. So I could have like this. That could be what I'm dividing. And then when I wrote this out, it'd be 1x to the 5th, 0x to the 4th, 0x cubes, 0x, and a 1. Because we want it to go from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1, and we have to have it go that way. Cool. I'll give you guys a second. I'm going to work it as well. These should go pretty quick. Okay, how do I always start this process? Like it's hot. Okay, so there's a 1. Then what? Okay, so -3 is what I get. What do I do with these? Add them, I get a -3. I think that's a 9. It's a -1. Here's what happened. What's -3 times -1? And -2 plus 3 is a 1. I'm going to include this bar in yellow, and we'll get -3. And the last term? 1. Can you tell me what degree we started with in my dividend? X to the 4th. I'm going to kick down 1 and start using these as my coefficients. I know that the answer then, instead of starting at x to the 4th, it's going to start at x to the 3rd, or cubed. And it's 1x cubed. You can write the 1 if you want to. Minus 3x squared minus 1x plus 1. And there's something wonky that happened. Plus 1 over x plus 3. My original divisor.
Why does the x to the power of 4 in the first one become where to go?
So why did it come down to 3?
Yeah.
Because if you imagine what's happening without all the other stuff, do you agree that this is what is happening? Like if we wrote it, what's x to the 4th over x?
X is 3rd.
Yep. Perfect. Cool, I lied. I'm not going to give you any homework tonight. Enjoy it. Come tomorrow ready to work. Did that not clear it up?
No, it's okay. I got it.
Okay. All right, appreciate you guys. That class went super duper fast. And we only had like